clothes. Can't you see his shirt collar underneath the coat?
Yes. I think he was hit first. I think the first shot fired in Dealey Plaza hit the president in the back. We have testimony from Roy Kellerman, who was his Secret Service agent, a man who had many years' experience with the Secret Service, sitting in the right front of the limousine. He testified that he heard that Boston accent say, "My God, I'm hit." Well, according to the Warren Commission, the first shot hit the president in the throat. Well, we know from medical reports that the voice box was destroyed. He never said anything if that was the first shot. But I think the first shot hit him down lower in the back, and he probably did say, "My God, I'm hit," which caused people to begin turning slightly to see what's happened. I think the second shot was from the front. Now this is
Where did the first shot come from in your...
I think it's entirely possible it came from the School Book Depository.
6th floor?
I'm not sure of that. If it, I'm not even certain that Oswald was on the 6th floor or that he shot anything. I'm not certain that the Mannlicher Carcano fired anything that day. But if something was fired that day by Oswald from the 6th floor, I think it's the one shot is the one that hit Kennedy in the back. And if that happened, it's my opinion that Lee immediately, or whoever handled that gun, immediately wiped the prints from it and hid it in that nest of books. I think the second shot came from the front, and it's possible that it was from the sewer. I'm not one of these who believes that the joint chiefs of staff were lined up in the sewer or behind the picket fence, but I do think that someone could have been in that sewer and fired with say a small caliber target pistol. They would have had a direct view of the president's throat. And I put my son in the sewer on the Thanksgiving Day of 1967, and he took pictures as my other boy drove a car around, and I would say, "Get it right here, get it right here," and he did a very good job. Now, if you can sight with a camera and take a picture, I think it's possible you could have pulled off a shot from the sewer. I think this, as I say, the second shot hit the president in the throat from the front, and possibly it was from the sewer. Then I think a shot went wild and hit the underpass, ricocheted down there. Now, not at Elm Street, but at Main Street, almost half a block away, where Jim Teague was standing, and he was slightly injured when that bullet ricocheted. That could not have been one ricocheting or from the car. So that means a shot hit way down there, and I'm not sure where that came from. It might have been from the roof of the depository. It might have been from the Dialtex building. I don't know where that shot came from. Then I think a shot hit Conley. Conley by this time has turned. He's holding his hat in his hand. He's turning to see what happened in the back seat. And I think he was hit, and it came down and
through the chest.
Through the chest. Well, from it hit right up in here. It came out and at an angle. And then I think almost simultaneously a shot came from the rear, and I definitely believe this came from the Dialtex building, 2nd or 3rd floor. A shot hit the president in the right rear occipital bone. And when you view the Zapruder film, you see a slight movement forward, a slight jerk forward.
Is that the jerk at 312?
Right. And then, almost simultaneously, from the front, with a high-powered rifle and obviously a frangible bullet, he was hit right, he was going down, and it hit him right here and blew the back of the head out. Now you see drawings with this part of the head blown out, but you never see one with the exact back of the head blown out. And a young man whose father was Marion Jenkins, a doctor at Parkland who helped work on Kennedy, said they could lift what was left of the brain from that cavity in the back of the head without even making an incision. Now, this boy stood in my kitchen right here where we are now. He stood right there and told me that his father came home and said that it was horrible, that the back of the head was blown out. Well, no medical man or anyone with intelligence is going to call this part of the head the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
You would say top of head, side of head, front of head, never back of head. But Marion Jenkins told his family, we lifted what was left of the brain from that cavity. It was so large. In fact, Jackie says she saw his hair being blown off the back of his head. And I think those are, in my estimation, the shots.
I see. Where do you think CE-399 came from? Was it an implant?
All
was
right,
it
I have two, and I do not know. I have two theories on that, and I waver between the two. I think it might have been a plant put on, and of course a good way to have had that bullet planted, 399, the pristine bullet, just prior to the arrival of the president at Elm, Houston. A young man named Jerry Belknap, B-E-L-K-N-A-P, was standing in the crowd on Elm Street, just west of Houston. They had ambulances posted at various spots along the parade route for emergencies in case the president, anything happened. And they certainly, I don't think, were thinking of possibility of assassination. They were thinking of heart attack or stroke or anything to someone in the presidential motorcade. And there was an ambulance very close to the underpass there. But just prior to the president's arrival, a young man named Jerry Belknap had what they called an epileptic seizure. And he just became, he had a seizure. And they used the ambulance, which would have ordinarily been used for the president under normal circumstances, just some illness. They used that ambulance to take Jerry Belknap to the hospital. They took him to Parkland. They took him into the emergency room at Parkland, and he got up and walked away. Now, this man could have placed that. Now this is certainly slanderous to say this, and I don't know, but I think they should have questioned Jerry Belknap, which
he was
they
not
did
questioned
not do.
before
No,
the commission?
he was not. No, he never even made an affidavit. They never asked him anything. So I certainly think this man should have been asked something. His doctor should have been questioned. He should have been examined, maybe those electroencephalographic referral tests, something to determine, did this man have epilepsy? Was it petit mal or grand mal? Something more should have been done about this in view of the fact that 399 showed up. Now, if 399 showed up legitimately as a part of the episode that day, I think it had to be the one that was fired from the Mannlicher Carcano with so little power that it wouldn't even penetrate. That gun was in such poor condition. And I think if you'll remember in the
they probed only
a finger length deep. Now that old bullet wouldn't even go in, and so consequently it was lodged in there, caught in the clothing and in the wound and in the moving and artificial respiration and all of the things they were doing, I don't know what they did, but what they did to Kennedy, it would have fallen out on the stretcher. And as they moved him from one place to another, here was this bullet. Now, I do not think it fell. There is no possibility. I've held $3.99 in my hand, and it would cause poor old Marion Johnson to have a heart attack if you knew that. But I did. I held that in my hand in the National Archives. And on November 22nd, 1963, I knew very little about guns and ammunition. You could have showed me a rifle and a shotgun, and I wouldn't have known which was which. I would not have known a revolver from a machine gun, practically. And today, I am fairly expert for a woman with guns and ammunition. And I saw that. I held that bullet. That bullet I don't think it had ever...
Looked like a test bullet.
Right. Correct.
It's also true that there was an unidentified CIA agent at Parkland that day, isn't it?
He certainly did. There was an unidentified... they did not identify him. He came in, showed his credentials, and said, "This is my friend," and never identified him. We don't even know who the other man was. There were two men who entered about between 1 and 1:30, and we don't know who they were, where he came from. We were not aware that the CIA had people here at all.
Is it also true that Kennedy's body was literally taken by force from Parkland Hospital?
Absolutely. That body was forcefully removed over the protest of all of the Dallas law enforcement officials. This was in November of '63. It was not a federal crime to assassinate a president. It was a federal crime to attempt to assassinate a president. But they had no federal laws to cover assassination of a president. Therefore, it became a Texas crime. This was in November of '63. This was strictly a crime under the jurisdiction of the state of Texas, and that body should not have been removed until all the proper procedures, the autopsy and everything was done to satisfy Texas law. And the decision was made immediately to remove the body to Washington, and they forcefully, I mean, it was almost fist fights, knocking people down. They wheeled that body out.
You know that for a fact?
I know that for a fact. They forcefully removed the body. And then it is my opinion that they, with equal disregard for the rights of the state of Texas, they removed all investigatory procedures from our Texas lawmen.
Okay, the morning of the assassination, Oswald and Frazier drove to the Texas School Book Depository from Irving, Texas, right? And in a bag, there's some question as to whether he had the assassination weapon or some curtain rods. What do you think about that?
There's some question in my mind as to whether he had anything except a lunch bag. But if he had a bag that was capable of carrying either curtain rods or a gun broken down, I'm a little bit inclined to believe the boy's story that day that it was curtain rods. And I know that Lee was capable of stretching the truth or evading the truth because we have his interview in New Orleans and the fact that he would tell Carlos Bringuer, "I am anti-Castro, may I help you train your men," and then go out on the street with pro-Castro signs and behave like he did. He was capable of deception. But I'm a little bit inclined to believe the curtain rod story, if he had a bag at all other than lunch bag. For this reason, both Lenny Mae Randall and Buell Wesley Frazier gave an example that he carried the package cupped in his hand with the palm of his hand, his fingers cupped around it, and it was up under the armpit. Now, of course, we have some discrepancy in the actual length of the gun itself. What he ordered and what he got were two different things, if he actually ordered and if he actually received that gun. We have no receipts. He did not sign anything to get that gun from. We never were able to determine, the Warren Commission wasn't, who actually picked up the gun.
Did he ever sign a receipt for his pistol?
No.
So there's
Neither
no...
one.
You don't
And
know.
this is completely... have you ever gone and picked up a package at a post office? You have to sign for it. They will not release it to you unless you sign for it. Well, now, if it had been 5 years or something like that, I would have understood the disappearance of this receipt. But this was less than a year. This was about, March, from March till November. I cannot believe that the post office, I mean, today I could accept anything wrong with the post office. I think we'd be better off with Pony Express. But then we had fairly good service from the post office. And I think they would have kept that receipt, those receipts. But another thing, back to the curtain rod story. You have seen in my home pictures that I know were taken the afternoon, late afternoon, of the 22nd or the 23rd. Now, the Black Star people are not certain whether, I mean, we can't seem to get a straight answer. They took pictures the afternoon of the 22nd. They took pictures the afternoon of the 23rd. One of those 2 days, Mrs. Roberts was hanging curtains, putting up curtains in his room. Now, I cannot believe that they would change the curtains and put up curtain rods and change the curtains to accommodate photographers. I think they would have left that room like it was. But you have seen pictures where they are putting up curtains. I think they were trying to make that closet look a little more habitable. I don't think there were curtains there. I think Lee could possibly have wanted curtains in there too, because it was, you could just look right in from the outside. It was a closet that had been converted to a room. And I think that is very interesting, and more questions should have been asked. Were there curtains in that room? Why did you put up curtains? Were there curtain rods? And I think this makes me doubt that he actually carried the gun. He denied it, of course, but we can't take, he was going to deny everything that day, certainly.
In your opinion, what intelligence connections, if any, did Oswald have?
I believe, and I can't prove this, when I can give you documentation for something, you know, and most of the things that I tell you, I can say, this is in volume so-and-so, page so-and-so, this is here or there. But I can't, this affidavit to the FBI proves this, or certainly upholds it. His cousin, Marilyn Dorothea Murat, they are still classifying material about her. Mrs. Oswald, Marguerite Oswald's sister, Lillian Clavery Murat, had a daughter, Marilyn Dorothea Murat. And this girl had a very strange career. She worked her way around the world teaching school. Now, I don't know how many languages she spoke and what kind of schools she taught in, but this is never made quite clear. There are some documents still withheld more than 12 years following the assassination regarding Marilyn Dorothea Murat. One document is Ray Marilyn Dorothea Murat and Harold R. Isaacs, Boston, I believe it's April 4th of 1964. Now this Harold R. Isaacs was one of the China boys accused of being communist, and he comes from that background and goes into Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I cannot verify this, but I have been told that MIT is a, quote, hotbed of CIA activities. Back in the 30s and 40s, we were told that the University of Chicago was a hotbed of communism. I don't know what it is today. It's a very fine university. But we in the South were told, oh, don't send your children there because that's a hotbed of communism. Today we are told that MIT is a hotbed of CIA activity. And Harold R. Isaacs is very prominent there. Now, what would there be about a little school teacher from New Orleans, a first cousin of Lee Harvey Oswald, that would make her so important that a document regarding Marilyn Dorothea Murat and Harold R. Isaacs would still be classified today? John Pick was in Japan in October of 1963. John Pick was Lee Harvey Oswald's half-brother. He claims that Marilyn Dorothea Murat came to visit him in Japan in October, and in the conversation he said, "What do you hear from Lee?" And she said, "Oh, he's in Russia, didn't you know?" And it had not been made public at that time that Lee was in Russia. Now, if this is true, she had some inside knowledge. Now, I have wondered if possibly Marilyn Dorothea Murat recruited Lee for the CIA. You see, his strange discharge. His mother was injured, and when I say injured, a candy box fell on her nose on December the 8th of 1958 while Lee was at home.
Now, you know that to be true because you've met the mother many times. And
well, I do not take her word for it. I would not. However, let me say, I do think she is an impossible human being, but she is intelligent. She is. Don't believe the stories that she's insane or she. And so far, I have found her to be very truthful. Now, when she accuses you of mistreating her or not properly taking care of her, not giving her enough money, these things, of course, I'm not considering when I say, but truthful about her relationship with her children and the government, I think Marguerite is truthful. No, I'm going by doctors' affidavits in the 26 volumes and in documents that have been released since 1967. Marguerite was injured. She worked for King Candy Company in Cox Department Store in Fort Worth. In December of 1958, Lee was home on leave. December 8th of 1958, a candy box, fell on her nose. It did not require treatment, medical treatment. She didn't even go to a doctor for a month. After Lee was gone back to the Marines, she went to a doctor, and I'm not, my memory may not serve me right. I believe his name was Dr. Goldberg, but that may be another doctor she consulted later. But she did go to a doctor in January of 1959 for treatment of this nose injury. And he gave her some medication, drained her sinuses or something. All right, from January until August, apparently she is in fairly good health. But in August 17th, Lee wrote a letter to the Marines requesting a hardship discharge to go home and take care of his ailing mother, who has been injured by a box falling on her nose.
Months have passed.
And almost, from December 8th of 1958 till August 17th of 1959. He requested a hardship discharge. There were 5 letters that passed back and forth between the powers that be in the Marine Corps. Where are we going to let this boy go? He would not ordinarily have been discharged until December. His enlistment would have been up then. He had almost 4 months of his enlistment remaining. On September 4th, he has not been discharged, but he goes to Santa Ana and applies for a passport. He listed all these countries he's going to visit, Finland, all the Russia, all these countries. And he uses, instead of a birth certificate, at the bottom of the application, he uses the number for his inactive Marine Corps Reserve number.
Mm-hmm.
He is that certain. Now, that passport was issued, he got it in his hands on September 10th, 1 day before he is discharged on the 11th. And he came to Texas. Marguerite apparently knew he was only, even though he's coming home on hardship discharge to take care of her. She borrowed a rollaway bed from her landlord to accommodate her son, who is going to, quote, be here a few days. He stayed 3 days. He withdrew $200 from a Fort Worth bank that he had deposited in December of '58. It had drawn $3 interest. He took that. And he left for New Orleans. Now, at the same time, we know that on March the 11th of 1959, a man named Flynn with the FBI approached Jack Ruby and asked him to be an informer for the FBI. And apparently Jack agreed. They did not contact him again throughout March, and they went till the 28th of April before they interviewed him again in his role as informant. They went all through May. They didn't talk to him at all during May. But starting in June, July, August, they are contacting him every 2 weeks, which is far more frequently than most FBI informants are questioned. It's every 45 days normally, not less often than 45 days, nor more often than 30 days, unless something hot is going on. Now, in September, the last of August, he apparently made a trip to Cuba. In September, he went to New Orleans and made another trip to Cuba. In September, Oswald goes to New Orleans. He has travel arrangements made by the travel agency in the International Trade Mart using Lewis Hopkins, the exact same travel agent who arranged all of Clay Shaw's travel, and by the admission of the CIA men, only knowledgeable travelers went to Russia through Helsinki. But his travel arrangements were made by someone who was very knowledgeable. In September, both Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald were in New Orleans. One leaves for Russia and one for Cuba. By October 10th, Oswald has reached Helsinki. By October 2nd, Ruby is back in Dallas, and the FBI released him for lack of productivity.
Is that Commission Document 1052?
Right. CD 1052. Now, it does not give the different dates. That's a different document. CD 730. Wait a minute, let me get it for exactly. Here it is. It's CD 732J 1 and 2. And it gives the exact dates. See, 1052 does not give the dates. It admits that there were 9 times that Oswald was contacted. There is another document, CD4, pages 155 to 159, which sort of opposes, but the important ones are CD 1052 and CD 732J, pages 1 and 2, giving the dates. Now, I told you that the first contact was March 11th, 1959. Second contact was, they didn't contact him anymore through March, and then they went all the way through April to April 28th. They contacted him for the second time. They didn't contact him at all in May, but June 5th they contacted him for the third time. Then they contact him again. Wait a minute, I missed one, just a minute, June 18th, June 5th, June 18th, that's twice in that month. Then they contact him July 7th for the 5th time. Then the 21st for the 6th time. Then in August, they contact him the 7th time, August 6th. The 8th time, August 30th. The 8th time, August 31st. And they don't contact him at all during September. I believe I told you that August 28th or so he made the trip to Cuba. We're uncertain of that, but we believe he did. There's some question that he made that first short trip.
The one-nighter.
Right. But August 31st, they contact him for the 8th time. September, he is in New Orleans and Cuba. September, Oswald is in New Orleans and on his way to Russia. And October 2nd, they contact Reedy for the final time. They don't need him. I think they don't need him anymore.
Do you think the government has documents that state what those contacts were about?
I do. Now, whether or not they ever reached the archives is a different matter.
But there's someone.
See, I'm aware that that note that the FBI destroyed, that's not the only thing that didn't reach the archives. There were 2 other items that we have receipts where the FBI took them from the Dallas police. And the National Archives, I also have letters from the National Archives saying, we don't have those. We never got them.
What do you think about the note that was delivered to the FBI and then subsequently destroyed?
Well, I have pretty firm opinions on this that I can't exactly document. On July 16, 1962, John W. Fain, an FBI agent in Fort Worth, went to Lee's home to interview him. He sat in front of his home for over 2 hours interviewing Lee. Now, when we got the transcript of the January 22nd or 27th executive session of the Warren Commission, even Alan Dulles, I believe, said, nobody's going to believe that's all they talked about for over 2 hours. His same report was so short, and he sat there 2 hours talking to him. Now, that afternoon, Lee went and paid his rent, which was late, overdue. He had no money. I believe John W. Fain hired Lee for an informant. In the report, he does say that Lee was cooperative and offered to call him if the Soviets tried to contact him or anything like that. Now, if we are to believe that this sullen, uncooperative, FBI-hating young man
was what they say he was. I don't believe that he would have cooperated and said,
For the
yes,
other
I'll
place,
help.
he's arrogant.
Right. Unless he was given money. I think that Fame gave him cash that afternoon, and he went and paid his rent. Now, Fame retired from the FBI in October of 1962 and turned the file over to James T. Hosty, Jr. And Hosty apparently was rabidly anti-communist, a rabid right-winger. I personally am a right-winger myself. But I think this man suspected that if you didn't stand up and shout for Joe McCarthy and for George Wallace, and I'm not really intending to compare those two, but I think anyone who was left of those two, Hosty considered them to be communists.
Mm-hmm.
And he considered that Fame had hired a Russian agent, and it was his life's work to prove this man a Russian agent. He knew where Lee was working. You could go down there and talk to him and question him and badger him, but he chose not to do that. He considered it would be better to go out there and badger those two women. And possibly if he kept at it long enough, one of them would break down and admit, oh yes, Lee is in touch with the Kremlin every other day. So he kept going out there. Now, to the Warren Commission, he testified that he did not want to go around the man's place of business and embarrass him. Well, he didn't hesitate a moment to go to St. Mark's School, where Ruth Payne worked. He didn't hesitate a moment to go to Bell Helicopter about Michael Payne. Why would he be so considerate of this, what he thought to be a Russian agent? So he made these trips out there, and Lee got enough of it. And he went down, when he came to Irving, and found out that these women had been questioned again on November 1st by Hosty. He went down, I think he went on the 8th of November. He went down to the FBI office, and I think he asked for Hosty. And I think they said, he's out in the field, working. And Lee said, you tell him to leave my wife alone. If he doesn't, I'm going to report him to Washington, to my superiors. I'm working up for you people too.
Okay.
And now, I don't, if he thinks that I'm behind his back trying to set up some FPCC chapter here in Dallas, I'm tired of this. I'm doing what you people told me to do, etc. Now, all of this is surmising on my part, you got to remember. But
it makes sense.
It makes sense. And I think the FBI said, oh, don't pay any attention to Hosty. He's, buddy, we're not interested in what you do. You just do what you're told to do for us, and you do anything The next day he writes a letter to the Russian embassy, and he starts a paragraph with, the FBI is no longer interested in my activities. That's in the letter of November 9th that he wrote at Mrs. Payne's house. Now, in volume 1, page, I believe it's either 37 or 57, in volume 1, Marina testifies to the Warren Commission on February 4th, 1964, that Lee said he went to their building, to the FBI, but I thought he was a brave rabbit. I didn't believe it. In volume 3, pages 18 and 19 and 20, Ruth Payne says that on November 9th, when he was talking to her Saturday, he told her he went to the FBI and left a note for Hosty. But Ruth Payne says, I later found out that wasn't true. Well, who could have proven to her it wasn't true except the FBI? So they had discussed that, and they lied to her. Now, it's my opinion that even in 1963, or today, if you went down to the FBI office and threatened to blow the place up, or burn it, or kill somebody, they would have you in Leavenworth before dark tonight, or in Springfield, Missouri. more probably. This just never happened. All of the testimony, no two people who saw the note have agreed on what the note said. I think the note merely said, stay away from my wife. If you want to question me about anything, come down, you talk to me. I don't think it said anything. I think any threat in it was a threat to report to J. Edgar Hoover or someone in Washington that this man was mistreating his family or something to that effect.
You previously mentioned to me that some information about some other ambush points in Dallas besides Sealy Plaza?
Well, we have no absolute proof on any of it. Found in Lee's possession were some pictures of General Walker's, the back of General Walker's home. Now these, they claimed, tied him in with the April 10th, 1963 shooting at General Walker's home. We didn't hear about this. Marina's the one who brought this up. But there were also pictures of the railroad trestle right down very near General Walker's home.
You've got some of those pictures.
I do. And these pictures indicate that Lee was down here around Turtle Creek and Lemon.
Right down here?
Right down here, taking pictures. Now, that would have been an ideal spot for ambush. You've got Turtle Creek running along
That's right,
there.
he did go through Turtle Creek.
Right. And see where he turned there with a high-powered rifle from that railroad underpass. I never can determine whether when you go under something that's called an underpass or whether the train going over it makes it an overpass. I never have.
Whatever.
Yeah. But this thing down here would have been an ideal spot for ambush. You've got Turtle Creek, a lot of shrubbery, sparsely populated. I think that whoever planned this thing and planned to implicate Lee Harvey Oswald, and don't misunderstand, I'm not sure that he wasn't involved, but I am almost certain he didn't know exactly what was going to come off and certainly had no idea that he would not walk away from it a free man.
In other words, you would buy the statement that Oswald said, I'm just a pastor.
When I have the recording from that night, his first radio press conference, and they're talking to him about Tippit, and he says, I didn't shoot anybody. And they say, well, did you kill the president? And he says, nobody has even said anything to me about that. Oh, I see, I am just a patsy. I'm just a patsy. What if Oswald had no idea that the president was actually going to be killed? If you'll remember when Truman was shot at by the Puerto Ricans and they killed one of his guards at Blair House, Truman's popularity was at about as low an ebb as it ever was. He had threatened to take over the railroads to keep them from striking, and that certainly alienated the left. He had brought MacArthur home, which alienated the right. He just about didn't have any friends, voting friends. And then the Puerto Ricans shot at him and killed one of his guards. And the American people rallied around him, and he went in by a landslide like the country had never seen since Roosevelt or before.
Like Nixon and McGovern?
Right. And what if Bobby Kennedy was a shrewd young man, and he certainly had contact with dissident FBI men who did not like Hoover. It had to be somebody planning this thing who knew every move that this man was going to make. Every move, where he was going to be every minute. What if Bobby decided that because of the Bay of Pigs and the missile crisis and the Vienna kitchen debate, and Kennedy had not come off too well in these things, what if Bobby decided that if there were a fake assassination attempt against his brother, the American people would rally around him and he would go in 64 with a landslide to prove we didn't want him killed. And what if Bobby used dissidents, FBI men, and government men, but what if the CIA put real ammunition behind the picket fence? Now, we heard later that there was a gunman arrested in Cobb Stadium. We don't know. That would have been an ideal spot. It would have a view of this motorcade passing on the Waste Market Hall. There was a picture published in the Saturday Evening Post right following the assassination. It's the picture where the president's body is prone and the Secret Service man over him and the foot is sticking out. But over on top of a building there is what appears to be a rifleman in the distance.
You have
And
that photo too, right?
it doesn't show the rifleman in here. It isn't wide enough view, but I do have the Saturday Evening Post. I can show you that picture. We were told that there were riflemen there. We were told that they had evidence that a rifleman had been up on Harwood. Now, these things I don't know. In 67 in Manila, a young man named Luis, Luis, Angel Castillo, Castillo, was arrested. He was put under hypnosis and admitted that he was in Dallas on November 22nd with instructions to hit the man beside the woman in the car with the red roses. And before someone immediately ran to him and says, they've already got him, Joe got him, leave. And I have all the Manila papers from that, and this is, Dr. Popkin has been working on this. I'm not sure that there's anything to it, but I have all of the papers and all of the documentation on that. Of course, they called off the president's visit to Chicago to the Army-Navy game at Soldier Field on November 2nd because there was word that there was to be an assassination attempt. They called that off.
I guess we should ask this question at the beginning, but how did you get interested in all this?
Well, I was not a Kennedy fan at all. I am not much better Catholic than he was, but I certainly felt that he was taking advantage of his religion, and I felt that it was a great pretense even then. They're running to Mass every morning. Now, I do think Rose Kennedy and Ethel Kennedy are good Catholics, and I admire those two women. But I was not a Kennedy fan at all. My husband worked where they furnished the Lincoln Continentals for the motorcade that day. They ran out of cars and borrowed my personal car, a Colony Park station wagon, and loaned it to carry part of the Washington Press. It was in the lineup, and when I got the car back, finally, it had fives on every windshield. And I have only 2 of them left. I have my husband's pass, Welcome to Dallas, Mr. President, November 22nd, and numbered on the back. I've kept that. But I was downtown. I was having lunch at the Ferrell Club. I called my husband at approximately 11:45, 10 minutes till 12. I was waiting for my salad, and called him and said, did they get in all right? And he told me, yes, they were in, and that he commented very favorably about Mrs. Kennedy's appearance. He said she was a very beautiful woman, much prettier than her pictures. And then I went back, finished my lunch, and went down on Elm Street at approximately 12:30. And as I walked down Elm Street toward the lower end, toward Houston Street, it was approximately 25 minutes till 1 when a tall black man ran up to me and said, is it true they shot our president? And there were tears on his face. And my first impression was he was insane. And I stepped back, and suddenly just the appearance of the street you knew something was wrong. There were
Yeah.
squad cars running down toward Elm and Houston with riot guns out the window, and there was a stillness. You know, it was just, you knew something was wrong. And I ran into a place that's called Newsland at Elm and Irving and asked if I could use the phone. And I called my husband and said, have you heard that Kennedy has been shot? And I'll never forget Buck's words. He said, he's deader than a doornail, and or a doorknob something. And I said, what makes you say that? He said, they had just said on radio that he was hit in the head hard enough that it spun him around in the car. And you don't, he had gone through the Italian campaign in the Second World War, and he said, you don't hit me once in the head that hard. And they lived to tell about it. So I stood there and with a little cluster of people around a transistor radio, and about 10 minutes till 1, I heard the first description of the assailant or the suspect over the air. White male, approximately 6 feet, approximately 30 years of age, approximately 160 pounds, white shirt and khaki pants. Well, I was horrified. I thought they'll never catch him. If this man has had a 20-minute head start, and now if he had been like Van Gogh and had one ear gone, or had Al Capone with a scar down his face, or a limp or something, yes, you might find him. But that was a description that would fit any one of 50,000 men in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I thought they'll never catch him. At 1:51, just about an hour later, they catch the man and say, we have the man. They caught him in another section of Dallas, in a theater, sitting quietly in a theater. Instead of being 6 feet tall, he is either 5'9" or 5'11", depending on whether he's in Russia or in this country. He is not 30 years old. He is 24 years old. In fact, 1 month into his 24th year. He is not 160 pounds. He is closer to 135 to 40 pounds. He does not have on a white shirt. He has on a dark, reddish-brown, multicolored shirt. He does not have on khaki pants. He has on brown wool trousers. And I said, something is wrong. This does not make sense. And the more I started that day, I placed one of my sons at both docks of the Dallas Morning News and the Dallas Times-Herald. I used another son and my husband to relieve them. They stayed day and night. For the next few days, I kept someone there buying newspapers. As a result, I have every issue of both papers. But following Oswald's murder, the Dallas Times-Herald put out an issue of a paper with the banner headline, FBI warned Oswald would be killed. And I understand that about 50 of those papers were grabbed by people like my son, and they jerked them back and destroyed them. Those papers are extremely valuable now. But I do have every issue of every paper.
You were offered quite a bit of money for that?
Quite a bit of money for that one paper. Now, I started that afternoon and indexed column by column every name that was in the paper, the different witnesses, the different people who made statements to the press. And then in September of 64, I got the report, and I did the same thing with the report. I thought it was the dullest reading I had ever gone through in my life, but I read it, every word. And then I found out that they had 26 volumes of supportive documents and testimony. I turned to volume 16, Commission Exhibit 1, and I started studying the exhibits one at a time. And I would think, what in the world is this? And I would go back into the testimony where CE1 was introduced. And every place it was introduced, I would read about it. By the time I got through 26, I probably knew more about the testimony and the documents than anybody outside the staff of the Warren Commission, because I didn't read the testimony straight through. I read the document, studied the exhibit, and went back, and of course I would get hooked on somebody's testimony and then read everything concerning that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would say that I have completely read the 26 volumes, I would say 5 times in the past 12 years. Then, in 1966, I found out that they had thousands of pages in the National Archives that were not published. I immediately went to Washington and tried to get in there. I did get in there. My first experience was rather frightening, or not frightening, it was unique, I guess. I said, I'm very much like these kids who write to me from all over the country, send me everything you've got. I said, I want to see what you've got. And they said, well, we've got rooms full of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you want. I said, well, I don't know. You know, well, we can't do anything for you. You have to specify. I said, all right, bring me documents CD 1 through 10. And they came out with these great big, it took me 5 days to go through them, because maybe CD 1 would have 5 big thick volumes.
Mm-hmm.
CD 4 would have 6 or 7 big thick. It took me several days, to page at a time, go through those. The next day, I say, bring me 11 through 21, and they come out with a little handful of stuff. So you never knew. At that point, you didn't know what you were going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through, I stayed several days, 10 days, I guess, and went through documents. And then I started ordering. I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I will order the things. It'd be cheaper than plane fare and send it to Hay Adams. So I started ordering documents. And I now have everything that has been declassified, either in Xerox copy or on microfilm. And then in 71, we got a big stack of them. And this was just about the time that, well, by the time we got them in 71, it was about the time that I went to the governor's office in 72, but I was not through indexing all this bunch when I went down there. But I took my 26 volumes with me, and I took the recently declassified documents in my index. I have over 30,000 3x5 index cards across index. Every name that's in the 26 volumes, every name that is in the document. And then, of course, in 68, I found out I could get access to the executive session. And I ordered all of the executive sessions. And I got a little stack about 3 inches thick. Well, I had probably 500 pages altogether, maybe more.